Namaste and good morning to everybody. Let's start with the Gita Dhyanam and the last verse of Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritvarshini Bhagavati Mashtadasha Dhyayani Amutvam Anusandhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshini नमो अस्तु ते व्यास विशाल बुद्धे कुल अरविंद आयत पत्र नेत्र येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान मया प्रदीपः परपान्न पारिजाताय तोत्र वेत्र एकपानये ज्ञान मुद्राय कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव वसुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगत गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्राहवती कृपेन वहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अशवथाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तनी सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवै रन नदी कैवर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थ गंधोटकम नानाख्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदे रह रह पे पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपातमं वन्दे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यस्तवे वेदै सांग पद क्रमोपनिषदै गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्ते तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. The last chapter and the last verse. So last chapter is what? Moksha Sanyas Yoga, right? 18th chapter. And the verse number is 78. So who speaks this? Sanjay does. Sanjay. Okay. Sanjay is that charioteer who is narrating the whole scene to that blind king. And the first verse was spoken by the blind king, Dhritarashtra. Okay. So these are some of the details we should try to remember. It's important. Okay. So yatra yogeshwaraha krishnaha yatra partha dhanurdhara tatra shri vijaya bhuti dhruva niti mati mama. Yatra means wherever. So wherever means even today, wherever we are, whatever we do. Yogeshwar Krishna, the Lord of Yoga Krishna. Yatra wherever, Parth Arjuna, Dhanurdhara, the archer. Tatra means there. Shri means prosperity. Vijay means victory. Bhuti means expansion. Dhruv means steady, firm. Niti, policy. Mati means conviction. Mam means my. So this is a Sanjay's conviction also. And Sanjay word itself is a very deep word. Samjay. That means a person who is victoriously self-controlled. So if we want to become Sanjay also, completely master of ourself, then this should be our conviction too. Okay. So wherever is Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, wherever the Parth, the archer, there are prosperity, victory, happiness, and firm policy, steady policy. This is my conviction. So as I was saying earlier, it's a closing stanza of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Altogether, how many verses are in Bhagavad Gita? We should know. 701 verses. If we add them all together in all 18 chapters. So this is the last one. So first of all, Krishna, the Lord of Yoga. All through Bhagavad Gita, Krishna represented the Atma, the self. The spiritual core is the ground where the whole play is happening. Our Atma also, where the whole play is happening because of the Atma in us. So we should never forget that. Our essence is the Atma. But then he says, Arjuna ready with his bow. You remember when Arjuna he threw the bow down, he set it aside and he said, I'm not going to do my duty. That's not the kind of Arjuna we want to be. Parth Dhanurdhara, he is doing his duty. He has not thrown down his instrument of effort and achievement. That's what bow is. So when he is ready with his bow, he is no more confused. He is brave. He is ready to face the challenges of this world. So now if we put these two pictures together, this is the symbolism of a way of life, which is a complete life. That means doing our duties, but at the same time, there has to be a spiritual understanding of our life. So we need to exert in the outer field, but still stay connected with the innermost essence. Spirituality can be lived in life. True spiritual understanding is an asset to us human beings when we are doing our duties. In today's society, when we see people confused, when we see them feeling helpless, fearful, stressed, anxious, because in spite of all the achievements in the outer field, they have a mastery over the matter, but they have forgotten the essence. So Lord Krishna is teaching us through Bhagavad Gita a happy blending of the sacred and the secular. That is the advice from Lord Krishna. Blend both together. So spiritual and the material values, they need to be happily wedded to each other. They should complement each other. Prosperity without peace within is a calamity. Gruesome. It's terrible. That's why those two Sanskrit words from the Vedas, Abhyudaya and Nishreya, combination of these two, not just one alone. And when we see this prosperity, success, expansion, and sound policy, the arrangement of these words is very beautiful. There's almost like an undercurrent of logic, which is evident when we really look through it. Prosperity, success, expansion, and sound policy. In Sanskrit, Vyasji used, he said, Shri, Vijay, Bhuti, and Dhruva Niti. Normally, we just want a Shri. We just want money only. We want material success. But then when he says Vijay, there has to be Victory over our senses also, victory over our ego also. That's why it has to be blended together. Money alone makes us arrogant. But when we have a Vijay also on our side, then Bhuti means the expansion of this intellect also should be there. We just don't want to live just with animal instincts. We got to rise up to the intuition, the Bhuti. And Dhruva, this has to be our firm policy. It got to become our policy, not just something to read about. The strong, firm conviction has to be there in us. No matter what happens, I will not shirk away from my duties, but at the same time, I will never forget who I am. Whether I'm sleeping, or whether I'm eating, or whether I'm helping, whether I'm teaching or learning, no matter what we are doing, never shaking away from our duty and being disconnected from our real sense. That's what he's saying. Shri Vijay Bhuti Dhruva Niti. So that's why I said very logically these words have been put in this last verse. So enduring prosperity must be that which arises from keeping all this in our mind. There has to be the success will be enduring only if it's nurtured and it's nourished. It's guarded and it's protected by a very intelligent, sound policy. So that's why it comes quite clear that it's not only Sanjay's faith, but this has to be our mantra also, if we want to be successful in life. So synthesis of both the spiritual knowledge and dynamic love expressed through our service to the mankind. And what is this love actually? Love is really a readiness to serve and sacrifice. Because love is not love if it doesn't serve and sacrifice. As a mother, we all know that. That is love. And love for the entire mankind he is talking about. Service, according to Lord Krishna, is the highest prayer. Normally, we want to pray outside. We want to pray in the temples, in the churches. But real prayer is a service in the world. That is the highest prayer. And also loving people. See, serving and loving, they go hand in hand. Loving the people around us is the greatest devotion. The people we live with also. People we work with also. And it's not just a people, human beings, anything else also. Yesterday, I was telling a story to the young kids about Krishna and Arjuna, where a poor man, very poor man, didn't have anything to eat, but when he saw a fish in the fishing net trembling, he had only 2 pennies in his pocket. He gave the 2 pennies to that fisherman and took the fish from him and released the fish in the lake. Poor man. He could have said, no, I have only 2 pennies. I don't want to let it go. But he saw that trembling fish. He said, fish is alive right now. Maybe I can save this fish with these 2 pennies. And he did. In that story, when fish went into the lake, she dropped out a gem from the mouth. So that story tells us God is watching us. Krishna is watching us, but we have to have that kind of a love. Love for the creation. We want to love the creator, definitely, but we cannot love the creator unless we love the creation. If we want to love our parents, we got to love all the children of our parents. Only then parents will be happy with us. The same thing goes with God also. We are all God's parents, God's kids. So our ultimate parent will be happy. So fish is also created by God. So in that story, it just portrays that how a small token of love made this poor man rich also. Prosperity, Shiri. Another thing I want you to note in this last verse, the last word of this last verse is mama. Okay. And the first verse, first word of the first verse of Bhagavad Gita was dharam. So this is a style of these scriptures. If you look at the last word and the first word put together, you know exactly what this scripture is talking about. So this scripture is about mam dharam. My dharam. As a human being, what is my dharam? This is what Lord Krishna is teaching us. We don't have to go far. We all have this in our own homes now. Read and reread. Try to find out what is my dharma. So we're going to end this over here because this was the last verse. And now I'm going to go through chapter by chapter quickly. Okay. Just a little summary of the chapter, not even a summary, just what kind of a message we get. I know each chapter is long and there are a lot of messages in there, but the key message which we get from each chapter, I'm going to go over that. But if anybody has any question before that, on the last verse, you can ask. Okay, if nobody has a question, first of all, we should remember this Bhagavad Gita is part of an epic which is called Mahabharata. It's part of that. And another thing you should know, who is the author of it, Rishi Vyas. And you should remember also that this is a Yoga Shastra. Lord Krishna said this is a Yoga Shastra. So scripture on yoga. In the form of the Upanishad, in your own books also at the end of each chapter, you can look at it. It says, Om Tat Sat Iti Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishad Su. Upanishad Su means that's a plural of Upanishad. So there are 18 Upanishads. Each chapter is an Upanishad itself. Upanishad means it is a student is learning by asking few questions and the Guru is teaching. Upanishad. Brahma Vidyayam. So this is a Brahma Vidya. This is a Vidya. This is a knowledge. By knowing this knowledge, you know everything. That is Brahma Vidya. Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. The dialogue between these two. And then each chapter has its name. So you're all familiar with this. So you should remember this. And what is this Om Tat Sat? We learned about that also. That really means, see, Iti means it ends. So Om Tat Sat denotes the supreme being. It's like by saying Om Tat Sat, we are thinking about God. So Om Tat Sat Iti Bhagavad Gita Upanishad. Okay. So now let's look at all the chapters, the name of the chapter, and what do we really get from each chapter as a yoga students. Number 1 is Vishad Yoga. Try to memorize the names of these chapters also. You will really get a great pleasure in remembering these. Vishad Yoga. Vishad Yoga, Vishad means like a detachment in a yogic terminology. Some people say despondency, desperation. But when you're on the path of spirituality, it is really means aversion towards the materialism of the world. And that's what Arjun said in this chapter. I don't want to be the king of this world. I don't want to be have the kingdom which is in the 3 worlds. Detachment. Detachment to the materialism of the world. Because you understand that everything is perishable, transitory, does not yield the lasting bliss. And this is also the aim of human life, according to Bhagavad Gita, liberation or moksha. So unless we have this vairagya in us, we are not starting to climb on this ladder. If we are still wandering here and there, going after the temptations of this worldly pleasure, we have not even set our foot on this path. So Vishad Yoga. Second chapter, Sankhya Yoga. If the things of the world are elusive and transient, and having aversion towards them, then search for the eternal truth is must. In other words, you have to become introvert. You need to have the wisdom. You want to realize that, yeah, this soul is eternal. Outside is temporary. We go after the constant and the eternal. And that's what's mentioned in the second chapter. What is eternal? What is the essence? That's a Sankhya Yoga, the knowledge, the wisdom. But we cannot remain introvert all the time. As a human being, we need to act also to sustain our body. Do our outer duties also. Fulfill them. We must act. That's why the 3rd chapter is Karam Yoga. But over here, Lord Krishna is teaching us, do the Karam, but how to do the Karam Yoga? How to convert your normal Karam into a Karam Yoga? He says, the desire for the fruit should not drag you to the world again. That's why the Karam Yoga has to be elements of selflessness, element of love, element of duty has to be there. Only then it becomes a Karam Yoga. So he goes over the detail in this chapter. How to go on with it. That is the main theme of this chapter. Then he says, ultimate goal is not reached just by being a Karam Yogi. So that's why the next chapter is like taking us to the next ladder or next step on this ladder of evolvement. Number 4 is Gyan Karam Sanyas Yoga. So while doing your duties, definitely you got to be detached from the fruit. But we should keep in mind that God is everywhere, that Gyan. Such a state is called Videha. He even mentions in this chapter that ancient sages like Janak, that's how they did the work. But how to attain this? He says through the yajna and sannyas. Make sure that every action of yours is a yajna rupi. Yajna means you are remembering God and not getting attached to the fruits. Every action, he mentions many, many yajnas in this chapter. So that is a Gyan Karam Sanyas Yoga. So this is a level of Videha. Because there are three levels Lord Krishna talks about: Videha, Prakriti Laya, and Brahmalina. So in the next one, he takes us to the next level. Number 5 is Karam Sanyas Yoga. Because this Videha state, once you have achieved it, God himself says, I will take care of you. I'll place you in that family where you can progress further. You'll be born in the house of a yogi so that you can start your journey right away. Because aim is moksha. Aim is not just Videha. You are still on the ladder and you have to work more. So he sends us to liberate from the cycle of birth and death, and we got to keep a keen eye on that. While doing our duties, keeping an eye on the essence. When a person with a further abhyas can see the clear distinction between the Prakriti and the Purusha, Atma and the rest of it, you become a master of Prakriti. And that's what Prakriti Laya stages. So from Videha, in the Karam Sanyas chapter, he talks about Prakriti Laya. You become master not only about your body, but you become a master of the Prakriti also. But again, when you are on the path. Okay. But this is also not the ultimate goal. Ultimate goal is the moksha. So more practice, more sadhana in number 6, Atam Sanyam Yoga. That is a chapter number 6. Atam Sanyam. Even a person who has not reached the Videha or Prakriti layer, this is what even a common person need to start practicing. Certain restraints he has mentioned, and the meditation he has mentioned in this chapter. To keep on walking on this path. Atam Sanyam. Sanyam means restraint. Live a life of moderation. Let go of the luxuries. Come back to the necessities and then to the bare necessities. And keep God in your mind. Love and serve. Atam Sanyam. And self-restraint, this Atam Sanyam has to be practiced by the body, which is different from the soul. So that's why he talks about, he gives us the knowledge about this body also, outside of the body also, and what we need to realize also. That is a chapter 7, Jnana Vigyan Yoga. See, all these chapters are linked together. Jnana Vigyan. Knowledge of the soul and the knowledge of the Prakriti. He goes in detail in this chapter. Then soul of the self-restrained person attains liberation, blends in Brahma, supreme soul, as water merges into the ocean. That is given in the next chapter. Akshar Brahma Yoga. Akshar Brahm. So when we have done that, that is Brahmalina. So he talks about Brahma, spiritualism, Karam, nature, etc. in this chapter. This is the 8th chapter. Akshar Brahma Yoga. A person who has become Brahmalina cannot come back. It's like a drop of water had merged completely in the ocean. So they cannot come back. They don't come back to tell us. So that's why next chapter, Lord Krishna himself tells us, ordinary aspirants like us, what should we do? He says, Raj Vidya, Raj Guh Yog. Because nobody is here to describe the form of indestructible absolute for us. A person who has attained that has already gone. But this is an easier way for us to liberate. Raj Vidya, Raj Guh. The yoga of kingly knowledge, supreme mystery. Why it's a mystery? Mystery in the sense that do not display your love for God. Don't display. Don't be boastful about it. It becomes hypocrisy. Go, keep it to yourself. That doesn't mean don't teach others, but this love, how much you love God, it should be between you and your lover. Raj Vidya, Raj Guru. There are several ways. It's a long chapter and several ways he is teaching us how to attain this love for God. Then he says God is everywhere. There's no place where God is not. And Arjuna asked the question, you say you are everywhere. Can you tell me exactly where you are? So Lord Krishna goes through the details of his manifestations in the next chapter, chapter number 10, Vibhuti Yoga. Because we all see that it's very difficult to perceive God. So the yoga of manifestation, we can focus upon any one of the countless manifestations. Lord Krishna mentioned about 75 different examples over here, but at the end he says, you cannot count them. They are countless, but focus on at least one of them. But that Arjuna is not satisfied with that, just with the names. He wants to know also. He wants to experience it also. So that's where the chapter number 11, Vishvarup Darshan. He requests. First he demands and then he requests. Because as a student, all we can do is request. So he requested and Lord Krishna listened to his request and he actually showed him the cosmic form, actual form of God. So this is the 11th chapter, Vishvarup Darshan. But then starts the 12th chapter, Bhakti Yoga. Arjuna saw it, but how can we see it? Because we are also like Arjuna. We have the desire to see God. We know God is everywhere. Theoretically, we know it now, but we want to see it too. But Lord Krishna tells us in chapter 12 in the Bhakti Yoga, if you cultivate these qualities, he has given a list of the qualities over there. If we have those qualities, you will also see it. And this bhakti means devotion. With devotion, he says, devotee can know God. Devotee can see God. And devotee can enter into God also. He promises us in this chapter 12. But qualities only we can cultivate. Sure, ultimately it will be the blessing of the Guru and the God. But the qualities we need to cultivate. And how such unalloyed devotion is possible? For this, Lord Krishna gives us even further explanation in chapter 13, Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga. So a person has to have a wisdom along with devotion. He says, know this field. Kshetra means the field. And also know the knower of the field clearly. See the distinction between these two. That is chapter 13, Kshetragya Vibhag. Even though we are all one, in essence we are all one, but we have different bodies, we have different attitudes, different kinds of intellect, or even in the same person, it keeps on changing. He answers Arjun's question. The reason behind the bondage of soul in the body and the reason for all these distinctions is the gunas. Guna Traya Vibhag Yoga. Essence is the same. It's almost like a water is the same, but it has been put into different colored bottles. Different shape, different size, different color. Essence is the same. Atma is the same, but our own bodies are different. And it's all because of the gunas, the qualities of the nature, which are sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. It's always a play between these three gunas. What is the soul? The supreme soul, which has to be realized, that is mentioned in next chapter, chapter number 15, Purushottam Yoga. What are the means necessary to realize Purushottam? What the qualities we need to cultivate again? Some of them are the same as in chapter 12. If you study deeply, you will understand it. And then he also brings our attention to the flaws which we have and the qualities we need to cultivate. And the title of that chapter is Dev Asur Sampad Vibhag Yoga. A devotee must cultivate certain qualities which are called a wealth. Sampad. Sampad means wealth. This is like a wealth for a devotee or for a sadhak, or the qualifications to see God, to enter into God. But at the same time, there are certain flaws in us we need to get rid of too. So that's why he gives us a list of the flaws also. He gives us the list of the qualities also. Dev, Asur. See, Dev means divine, Asur means demonic. Very scientifically, it has been explained for us in detail. To attain these divine qualities, we must have the utmost faith, which is called Shraddha. Without Shraddha, you cannot do anything. Even this material world, without Shraddha, things cannot be done. But with the Shraddha, you can move the mountains. But in this next chapter, Shraddha Traya Vibhag Yoga, he even dissects this term Shraddha for us. What is that Shraddha? How should we do our deeds with this faith? He even talks about Shraddha can be Rajasic, Tamasic, or Sattvic. And in different deeds, what do we really see? What do we need to cultivate? That is the topic of chapter 17. Then the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Moksha Sanyas Yoga. What will be the fruit of a faith and devotion? So if you have a sattvic faith and par bhakti, we will attain the aim of human life according to Bhagavad Gita. And aim of human life is liberation. It is also called Moksha and Nirvana. To attain this, devotee needs to become free of worldly desires. Ultimately, a devotee will be free of this desire for liberation. And he becomes a Puran Kam. Puran Kam. That means completely contented. No desire, no fluctuation. It's just like a complete calmness in a devotee's mind. Because the devotee is remaining absorbed in the devotion to God alone, nothing else, God alone. And by going through this whole journey, devotee understands what and who God is. So this a drop of water that falls into the sea, it's like it inseparably unites with the absolute. That is a moksha sannyas. Soul merges with the supreme soul, or the fraction, because Lord Krishna said, Atma is a fraction. It's an ansh of the anshi. This ansh has gone back to the whole. So there's no fluctuation at all. So this is a moksha sannyas yoga. Okay, so these are the 18 chapters. We will start it all over again, I would say in a month or two, because we are going to start one small Upanishad the next Sunday. And then after that, we will go back to this Bhagavad Gita. So if you did not get a chance, or if you want to go over it again, because this is the kind of a scripture which we want to go again and again and again. Every time to take a dip in this ocean, you will see what kind of a refreshing coolness you're going to feel. You'll always find some answer to some other question which was erupting inside you. But remember these three stages: Videha, Prakritile, Brahmlena, and then ultimately Puran Kama. So these are some of the terms, if you remember, while going through this great scripture, you will see that more and more clarity comes into you. Okay, so now what I would like to do, the Shanti part, then Urmil is going to recite the last 10 verses, then there will be a bhajan. But if you have any question after the Shanti part, you can ask the question also, or any kind of a comment. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, any